Welcome to greeneconomy.tv. I'm your host and facilitator, Byron McDonald. Today, we're going in conversation with Moses Lelaka, a water laboratory manager at Set Point Laboratories. He will be going in conversation with publisher Gordon Brown. But before I go ahead, as I say at each show, greeneconomy.tv provides insights and intelligence on all sustainability related matters. So let's invite on our guest. Hey guys, how are you?
Hi, Byron.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So, Moses, at each show, I hand the show over to Gordon. He asks all the relevant questions. So, Gordon, I'm leaving you to it again.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Byron, and just a warm welcome from my side to Moses. We've got I'm really looking forward to our chat because what we're talking about here ultimately is going to be water quality and the role of Set Point Laboratories in measuring and monitoring and reporting on this important factor. And I've had the privilege of organizing a number of water conferences and publications over the years, and I've always looked at the key factors as it affects water. So the first one is obviously the climate, rainfall, and so forth. And the next point might be storage. How are we able to capture this rainwater and store it? The other one, of course, is the transport of water. And then the other thing, and that part of that is access to water. And then we also talk about water efficiency and these types of issues. But arguably, one of the most important topics that relates to water generally is in relation to the water quality. So it's one thing to have water, but if that water is degraded or polluted, it's really not only is of no value, it actually causes problems. So, I mean, a great example, and we were chatting briefly off air, a great example of this in the recent past was a focus on things like acid mine drainage and the effect of this polluted water on the environment and on human health. And subsequently, we've heard about, and in fact spoken about on this show, crises such as the recent spillage in the Vaal Dam and so forth. Perhaps just to give us some background into just how this whole issue around water quality is affected by events and by spillages and by companies, and just how important it is. Perhaps I can just ask you to just give us an overview into the water resource and how important water quality is as a point in that regard.
Yes, Karen, thank you so much for the opportunity. As I was talking to you in the background, uh, water is a very, very scarce commodity, and it's slowly becoming very, scarce. And I must say that uh, it's quite critical that we look into conserving this commodity. Things like your acid mine drainage. Uh, can you cut a bit? Can you cut a bit? Gordon, can you cut?
Yes. Cut. Sorry, well, just carry on.
No problem. You can just carry on with the question. It's no problem. You can just carry on with it.
Yes, because I actually looked at the questions that we actually prepared.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So I just wanted to we're definitely going to move on to those. I just wanted to ask you to give us this kind of brief overview, if you wouldn't mind, just in terms of, how water quality, let's talk about how water quality affects, the use or the value of water. This is at a general level, perhaps from a Gauteng point of view. I believe you're based in Gauteng. I mean, it goes without saying, of course, that the water quality is fundamental to the use of water, right?
Yes, definitely.
And so, for example, and I know, for example, from a point of view of public service delivery, if you like, there are a number of authorities that are responsible to maintain the quality of water. The municipality comes to mind. I think off air you mentioned the department and the water boards and so forth. Perhaps just speak to us about your public health or your public customers. What do they expect from you? How do they use your services?
Normally, most of our customers, our clients, they will be looking. Remember, with regards to the water quality, we've got the South African National Drinking Water Standard, which is actually taken from the World Health Organization. That has been derived, from studies done looking at the impact assessment of, certain parameters that you normally pick up in water. So in most of the cases, our customers would be looking for things like your bacteriological water quality as well as the chemical water quality. Now, you will know that, your E. coli, your total coliforms, your total bacterial quality of the water is quite critical, health-wise, and also the chemical determinants are quite critical health-wise, in terms of the water quality. So it's quite critical that, before consumption of the water or before the water is distributed to the public, the municipalities as well as the water boards, look into what is actually contained in water.
Yes, indeed. And that's obviously where you guys come in, right? I mean,
that is
they'll
where
bring you water samples, and then you'll test them against that international standard.
That is where the laboratory now comes in. Where we would take the sample from our customers, from the water board, or wherever the sample might be coming from, and then bring it to the lab for a analysis. That is where now we'll be doing the comprehensive test to see what is actually contained in the water, if the water is suitable for human consumption. Remember, we're not only checking if the water is suitable for human consumption, we're also checking if it's suitable to be disposed, if it won't in any way have an impact on the environment. You can imagine if an industry can release all their effluent into our streams, what will happen? What will happen to our aquatic life? What will happen to our rivers? What will happen to our wetlands? Those are some of the things that we basically look at.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just one last question, just from my side, before we turn to your questions. I've always been curious, and I know that this differs depending on the water source, but just how different is the water quality that you might find in a stream or a reservoir or a dam? Just how different is that from the drinking water that comes out of our taps? Is it radically different, or is it simply treated for bacteria and metals? I mean, what are you looking for in terms of testing council water?
It's radically different, because you would notice, Gordon, that the underground water there's actually a lot of minerals that get dissolved. So obviously it's the raw water, it's not treated, and your municipal water is basically the water that will be coming from the dam. Most of the time, it's the water that will be coming from the dam, treated by the municipality and supplied to the community. So the quality there, it's quite different.
Yes, and so it's not just the municipality that you work for at SetPoint, is it? I mean, you also have private individuals who want to test water. Perhaps you have companies who want to also keep track of water. Maybe they've got some on-site water treatment of their own. Perhaps just talk us through, apart from the municipality and council, who else sort of typically comes to you, and what sort of services do you deliver to them?
That will be your food companies, and some of the production companies. Like your food companies will basically be looking at, if the water is, suitable to prepare food. And then for process companies, it will be, some of the processes obviously require water. And then you need a special quality of water so that your machine don't corrode and cause expenses to repair. Like your ESCOM, for power generation, obviously there's the need for water analysis. Some turbines work with water, and for plastic manufacturing, some of the coolants work with water. So you need to know what the quality of the water is, before putting it through the process, so that it doesn't end up, causing damage to certain, sensitive equipment.
Yes, so there's actually quite a broad scope of applications that you offer. Perhaps if you can expand on that if you want to in this next question, but perhaps also just now give us some context. What exactly does SetPoint offer? Who is SetPoint, and what exactly do you guys do in respect of this issue of water quality?
Okay, SetPoint is one of the market leaders in analytical services. Our specialty lies, mostly in your water analysis. It could be your borehole water, your municipal water, industrial effluent, the processed water, the water that is used for, making beverages, it's quite a broad scope. And we also cover the minerals as well, because remember, in terms of the minerals, we're looking at, the mines where, people want to start mining, and then they looking at what sort of minerals they would be suitable to be mined around the area. So basically, we're dealing with water analysis and mineral testing.
So that's what you were touching on there is your mineral analysis in the water. So is that a fairly large component of your business? You mentioned industry, you mentioned mining. Is there sort of a broad need for this mineral analysis, or was it quite specific to the mining sector?
It's in terms of the mineral, just to clarify, in terms of the mining, we're looking at it's more like your soil samples. That is what
Right.
SetPoint covers. It's water part as well as the soil part. Now there's the soil part. There's minerals in the soil, where you will be looking at your platinum, your gold, and all other minerals, your iron, and all that essential minerals. And in terms of the water, we're basically looking at there's also minerals, remember, but we're also looking at the water quality as well.
So obviously we learned from our experiences in the past 10 or 15 years that the water wells up in the mines, but the minute it comes into contact with the soil or the walls or the sand in the area of that mine, it becomes contaminated with those minerals.
Yes.
And if I'm not mistaken, it ends the way the mine typically treats that is through tailings dams and so forth. I mean, are you often asked to test the tailings dam water, or is it water that's actively being pumped out of the mine? I mean, I'm just trying to get a sense of why the mine is testing it. Is it an environmental impact consideration, or are they testing it to see if they can actually use that water?
In most cases, the mines test the water to see if the mine has got an impact on the water quality, and it's part of their license, to test the water quality around the mine. Besides the acid mine drainage, there will be boreholes, around the mine to see if any activities that is taking place in the mine has got an impact on the groundwater.
Yes. Okay. Now I understand. And so tell me,
Actually,
just from a
it's actually part of the regulation. It's enshrined in one of their license requirements. That
yes.
they need to ensure that any activities that is happening in the mine does not have any impact in the groundwater, or does not have in any way contaminate the groundwater.
Right. And tell me, these analytical services, do you offer them only in South Africa, or do you offer them internationally?
For us, I mean, the sky is the limit. We've got clients from your DRC, we've got clients from Namibia, we've got clients from Mozambique. So for us, the sky is the limit. I mean, we offer our services to anybody that needs our service.
Right, right. So we've discussed mineral water analysis or mineral analysis of water. Let's
Yes.
talk a little bit about water analysis. What is the purpose of water analysis, and what are you looking for as far as that's concerned?
But the purpose of water analysis, firstly, it's quite a wide scope, as I've indicated. Firstly, is just the most primary one is to indicate if it's suitable for human consumption. And the other purposes will be to see if it's suitable to be disposed. Because remember, we also taking care of our natural or of our environment. So we're looking at if the water is actually good to be disposed into the environment, if it cannot in any way harm any aquatic life, and then the other thing will be to see if it's um, certain mines or certain industries comply with the regulations.
Yes. And so, I mean, we've been exposed to quite a lot of issues here in the Western Cape, where the farmers, especially the wine farmers, as an example, that because of the fertilizers and the insecticides and things that are used, if they allow that water to simply run off into local rivers, it can cause a problem. And responsible farmers treat their water before running. And I suppose they're the types of people that would need, amongst many others, who would need those types of services. But tell me, and let's move on to this question about systems. You mentioned Eskom needing to look at water because they use water in their systems. Is this part of what this analysis is for in terms of what value you're adding to your customers? Is it to help them understand the quality of their water for the purposes of their entire industrial system?
Yes, exactly. For most of the decisions to be made, whether to treat the water or not, depends on the analytical results that they obtain from us. You would say, in the case of the system, we would take your water before the system, and we take the water after the system, and do the water quality analysis and see what impact the water quality has on the system, or what the impact the system has on the water quality.
Right, right. And then coming back to environmental safety, how does this water analysis that you do, how is it used to determine impacts on environmental safety?
You will notice on section 21 of the National Water Quality Act, there are certain environment impact assessments that has been done, with regard to the water quality and the impact that it has on the environment. Just imagine if you dispose the water that's got very low pH into the stream, or if you discharge the water that's very acidic into the stream, what's going to happen to the aquatic life? If you dispose the water that has got high nutrients, like the water that's got high fertilizer content, the water that's got high ammonia nitrate content, obviously those nutrients lead to plant growth in the water, which depletes the water from of oxygen. Imagine now if the effluent has to be released into your wetlands. All the aquatic life that's in the wetlands and in the rivers and in the stream definitely going to be affected. So that will definitely have a serious impact on the environment. You've seen what your RTBS poor dam look like. There's a lot of storage
With the water hydrant.
Exactly. So there's a lot of nutrients that is released into into a dam. There's a lot of plant growth. Those plants, are depleting the water of oxygen. Now, in the next few years, you won't be having a fish. Our kids won't even understand what a fish look like because all those will be gone.
Right. And those fish are obviously supporting the ecosystem. I mean, they're food for birds
Yes,
and other creatures, and it's a
exactly,
critical part of the ecosystem, right?
exactly.
So that's yeah. I mean, these things are so important, and it's great to know that in South Africa we have a high standard of care. We have these regulations. We have this legislation. We've adopted these global standards. And we've got organizations like yours that are able to offer these sorts of services. Um, so just a few big picture questions then. We've spoken about the effect of poor water quality on the environment, and I suppose this is a bit of an obvious question, but I mean, is water analysis essential in South Africa?
Very, very, very essential. Um, I must, pose this question. Can you imagine if we are living in a country where there's no regulations. The industries discharge their water into the stream. There's no any guidelines in terms of the water. Can you imagine that kind of a situation, where people will be drinking from the rivers that are polluted? You know, that will definitely have an impact on the human life, but also not only on the human life, but also on the environment.
Yes, no, absolutely. And I mean, obviously, there's an industry around water in terms of the various aspects, and of course, water quality is no different. And no doubt, there are multiple laboratories. What is it about Set Point Laboratories that makes you different? How do your services differ? Uh, Perhaps you can just explain your unique selling points, perhaps.
I must say that we pride ourselves with the quality of the analysis and the accuracy of the results that we produce. You know, within a short space of time at a very, very reasonable cost.
Yeah, no, great stuff. And so tell me, I mean, just as you've worked as you have with various samples over the years, um, what are you noticing any trends? I mean, is the water quality diminishing? Are you seeing new threats? Perhaps give us a small sample of the types of threats that you see. We've mentioned runoff from agriculture. We've mentioned industrial agriculture. We've got human settlement, effluent, often from informal settlements and so forth. What are you seeing? What sort of outcomes are you seeing from the water that you've been testing or overseeing the test of over the last, let's say, the last 10 to 20 years or so?
Yes, I think the water quality is obviously diminishing. Like you've pointed out, with unplanned informal settlements where they will be discharging their water into the natural streams, and some of the settlement will be around your wetlands. So obviously that is having quite a serious impact on the water analysis. But also, just to point out that certain medical products, that can be thrown or dumped into the system can also have an impact on the water quality. So in general, I think there's a bit, our local authorities basically need to to put up more treatment plants, in order to accommodate, the increasing volumes of the waste that is discharged into our streams, but also to enforce the regulations, just to make sure that people comply or industries comply with the regulations. There's no use having the regulations, but uh, 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 people don't comply with those, or the individuals or private companies don't comply with those.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. So, I mean, this is you raising the point I was going to ask you now. I mean, what would you like to see happening? I mean, you've got, in any given, let's say, in any given river way, a waterway that's perhaps a confluence of multiple rivers, it's not hard to figure out, who the culprits are, is it? I mean, you know that there's certain number of industries up there. There's a certain type of agriculture, probably a certain number of large commercial farms. There's perhaps some settlements. Would you like to, or do you think it's feasible or possible for the municipalities and for government to insist that large energy, or rather large water users that are impacting the quality of water, that they treat their own water on site, and perhaps insist that there's a greater number of tests that are conducted on that water, and perhaps that information is shared. I mean, do you think that that would be of value?
That could be of value. I think it's quite critical that, I mean, it's important for the industries to erect things like your pre-treatment plants, so that whatever they release into the streams, or whatever they release into the municipal storages, comply with the legislation, but also just to put a bit of just to be a little bit strict on enforcing the regulations. I mean, it's not that difficult to see who the culprits are, you know.
Yes.
So if they can put a bit of, if they can be a little bit strict on enforcing the regulations to ensure that, people comply, because at the end of the day, we might end up using this water that we pollute as drinking water at some stage.
Yeah, exactly. So it's also like air pollution and other forms of pollution. I mean, very often the penalties for polluting are very low, and as you say, that's even if there's proper enforcement, and fines and penalties are brought to bear, which is often not even the case. What do you think the municipalities should focus on? I mean, do they need to upskill? I mean, do they need to send their guys through to come and meet with you, and so you can explain to them what you're finding and what they need to be looking for? How do you think the municipalities can act to
I think
raise their game in this regard?
I think there are already measures in place. We've got the green drop certifications, which guides, which provide the guidelines for what the storage compliance should be. So those are already in place. It's just to enforce those, regulations to ensure that the municipalities comply. But also, if they can increase the number of tasting. I mean, you can only
Yes.
know the quality of water if you do the testing, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So a final question from me, and firstly, just thank you very much indeed once again for joining us. It's been great to chat to you. It's been great to understand, the baby steps that are happening out there. This need to test water, the role of industries, the role of municipalities, the role even of individuals. I mean, off air, we were chatting about how people even come to you guys and to test their borehole water and so on and so forth, which is fantastic. But my final question just is to say, where are we going? Where's Setpoint Laboratories going? Do you see there's going to be an expansion in the number of tests? Or do you see this as a growth industry? What do you see? How do you see the future, basically, from a water point of view, from a monitoring point of view, from a testing point of view? Perhaps just give us your insight as to perhaps how you'd like the next 5 or so years to work out, and perhaps some of the things that you're worried about that might not or happen or might happen to challenge this water quality over the next 5 years.
I think I see, a set point expanding, and I'm appealing to, all the stakeholders to start looking into, water testing. But I see this expanding because there's no time where we would say we don't need water anymore. So this is quite critical. It's quite important that, I'm appealing and I'm encouraging, everyone, to start looking into water testing. It can be a borehole, it can be a river water, it can be potable water. You know, it's quite critical that you know the quality of the water that you are drinking. It's critical that you know the quality of the water that you are disposing into the stream. So somebody might be, depending on that particular or that water for survival. So it's quite critical that people look into water testing and know the quality of the water, and then the stakeholders try to enforce the regulations, to ensure that people comply with the regulations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And thanks very much indeed for that. And thanks again from my side. Byron, handing back over to you, sir.
Thank you, guys. So informative, and water is an important topic. I'll just end it off. Thank you, guys, so much for being on the show again.
Thanks a lot, Tim.
See you. Bye bye. Important as each show and the long term thinking, all those things, especially for myself with these health problems. Water is so important. You need to look at these set point laboratories bringing their part. As I say, each show, the guests we have on greeneconomy.tv provides insights and intelligence on all sustainability related matters.